Well, hello YouTube and welcome to Thursday's edition of The Breakfast Club with Got That Funk. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to talk about something a bit different this week just for the sake of variety, really, because I am trumped out at the moment. Although I've got lots I want to talk about, at the same time I don't want to turn this channel into a great big Trump fest or, whatever. Anyway, certainly not my segment on this occasion, but I reserve the right. Anyway, this week I want to talk about something which was inspired by one of our commenters a couple of weeks ago. I think his name is I Don't Care 80. And we got to talking, or we had a little exchange anyway, and for what he said, sort of seemed to suggest that he was in favor of some form of eugenics. And eugenics is something that I've given a lot of thought to over the years, and I generally come down on the side of it's a bad idea, just overall. Having said that, I'm going to use an example from science fiction to sort of help understand why I think eugenics has such appeal, right? Now, for people not familiar with the term, first of all, eugenics basically means designing people to come out a certain way by manipulating or encouraging certain genetic traits or discouraging other traits, either scientifically or by some other means. And I'm a big fan of Star Trek, and that includes most of the permutations of Star Trek anyway. I like the original series, Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, and almost all the movies. But in the Star Trek universe, certainly in the Next Generation and onwards, eugenics is just an accepted fact of life. If that you've got some kind of problem in your genetic code, it's detected while you're still gestating in the womb and corrected at that stage. And they've weeded out, most criminal tendencies, for example, and most types of mental illness, for example. Those things have come up in various different episodes. And I think there's so many ethical questions to, whether we should, just because we could, manipulate, basically alter the course of evolution is a pretty big decision to make. Make that decision for yourself, I suppose, but like to decide to do it as a society, I think is a pretty big step. And I wonder, I Don't Care 80 and I got to talking about the value of intelligence. Now, I think pretty much everybody would agree that intelligence is a pretty important and fundamental aspect to being a human being and having any chance at success and prosperity as you advance through life. Doesn't depend on being smart, but being smart certainly helps. I think that's self-evident. And not always, but yeah, it certainly can help. But there's lots of advantages, as I pointed out in my comment, because I mean, people might just as easily say physical strength is as important or more important, or a resistance to disease or whatever. I mean, what if we could genetically engineer people so the aging process more or less stopped at around 35, and you could just carry on at that sort of level of physical maturity indefinitely, unless you got in some sort of mortal accident or a mortal illness. But just in terms of if you just kept eating and breathing, man, your body could just keep going. What if we could what if we could engineer that? Would that be wise to do? At what level of sophistication with genetic engineering do you say, what, that's not ethical, or oh no, that's not wise, or oh no, we can't predict what the end result will be? Because from my point of view, that last one is the most important one. And I think it's kind of inherent in, we don't have any basis for comparison when it comes to artificially manipulating genes. You can't just look at that person who's born from that result and think, oh, this works or it doesn't work necessarily, because it's successive generations upon which you have to base these sort of observations. That would take, a minimum of 100 years. 100 years after the decision had been made to make these kinds of changes and deal with the consequences come what may. And the thing is, you don't necessarily know where the consequences are going to lead. Early indications might be good, But there's no necessary guarantee that there won't be problems inherent down the road that you can't predict at the early stage. So I'm like I said, I'm of the mind that you know, genetic manipulation of human beings in general is probably unwise. I think unless we know an awful lot more about how associative traits work and how if you remove one thing, you might accidentally be taking out other things which aren't directly involved but related to certain traits and characteristics. You know, like I say, in the Star Trek science fiction, they've removed most criminal tendencies from people. Would that be wise? Or is the sort of Clockwork Orange example more relevant, whereas that's sort of inhibiting you from being a totally free being if you're genetically predisposed not to do anything wrong or illegal or immoral or whatever? You know, if you're genetically disposed to behave a certain way, are you still free? These are interesting questions, and I'm sure this video hopefully will spark a few more in your imagination. I look forward to discussing your ideas and mine in the comment section down below. And I don't yet have a guest lined up for Friday, but I might see if I can pull a few strings. But if not, I think we won't see anybody here till Sunday with Kazoom, because I'm pretty sure JJ Talks is traveling at the moment. All right, thanks for watching this video. Peace.